guys, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to ASMR. ASMR showcases spine-chilling stories from Reddit. All will be narrated in a soothing ASMR whisper. So let's find a quiet spot, relax, and dive into the world of whispers and chills with these scary stories from Reddit. I never believed in any of this alien stuff. Still don't really. But I can't explain what we saw that night. My wife and I were camping by Lake Wabello in Iowa, right at the edge of the state park. We'd rented one of those older cabins, tucked away from the main campgrounds. Real quiet spot, no one else was around. It was early spring, still chilly at night, so we were basically had the place to ourselves. The first night, everything was normal. We made a fire, cooked some hot dogs, drank wine and just relaxed. Around 11 p.m. we went to bed. I'm a light sleeper, so I notice when things start to go off. Around 2 a.m. I woke up because our dog, Rudy, was whining by the door. Not barking, just this low, nervous whimper. I put on my coat and stepped outside with him. It was dead quiet, not just the usual nighttime quiet. There were no insects, no wind, no rustling, just stillness, the kind that make your ears ring. Then I saw them, these lights hovering over the lake, 3 of them, maybe 30 feet above the water, pure white, no flickering. They weren't moving, just there, like someone had paused a video. I thought it might be drones at first, kids messing around, but there was no buzzing, no sound at all. And then, bam, one of them shot straight up, gone in a split second, no arc, no curve, just straight into the sky like a bullet. Then another followed, then the last, gone. Rudy bolted back into the cabin and hid under the table. I'm standing there, mouth open, trying to figure out what the hell I just saw. I didn't wake up my wife because, honestly, I thought I'd imagined it, or maybe dreamt it. I went back to bed and told myself I had too much wine. The next morning, our car wouldn't start. The battery was fine, fuel was fine, it just wouldn't turn over. I called the tow service from my cell, no signal. My wife's phone, same thing. We walked a mile up the trail before we got enough bars to call for help. The guy said he'd be out in a couple of hours. When we got back to the cabin, Rudy was gone. We'd left the door open, yeah, but he never runs off, never has. We called for him, walked the woods, the shoreline, nothing, no tracks, no barking, just gone. That night, I finally told my wife what I'd seen. She didn't laugh, she got real quiet. Then she said, I've been having dreams. I asked her what kind. She didn't want to say at first, but eventually she told me. She dreamt there were people standing at the foot of our bed, tall, thin, with huge black eyes. They never moved, never spoke, just stared. I told her she probably saw something on TV. She said no. It didn't feel like a dream, it felt like a memory. We left the next morning, got the car running somehow. The mechanic just jiggled some wires and it started like nothing was ever wrong. He looked spooked though, said this wasn't the first time he'd seen weird electrical failures out here. We filed a report for Rudy, put up some flyers, but no one ever found him. A couple of weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail, no return address. Inside was a Polaroid photo, blurry and dark. It looked like trees, maybe a shoreline, and in the middle, 2 glowing white dots hovering above the water. Just like I saw that night. No note, just the photo. I still keep it in my desk drawer. My wife won't look at it, and we haven't been back to Wabello since. I never believed in aliens. Not really. Not until I started waking up exactly 3:33 every single night for almost a month straight. Not 3:32, not 3:34, always 3:33. At first, I chalked it up to anxiety or stress. Work was rough, and I just moved into a new apartment in a small, quiet town in Maine. The kind of place where everything shuts down by 9 p.m. I figured I was just adjusting to the silence. But it wasn't the silence that was waking me up. It was the buzzing. It wasn't loud, just this faint, high-pitched hum that made the hairs on my arms stand up. It would start soft, then build slightly until I opened my eyes, and by then it was gone. I checked the time, 3:33, every time. On the 5th or 6th night, I started to notice other things. My bedroom window would be open. I never sleep with the window open. Sometimes the blinds would be pulled all the way up, like someone wanted a clear view inside. And once, I woke up with dirt on my floor, a thin trail leading from the window to the foot of my bed. Still, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I opened it myself and forgot. Maybe I tracked the dirt in earlier and just didn't notice. But then came the dreams, or at least I thought they were dreams. I'd be lying on a cold metal table, surrounded by those tall, grey figures. Every time I tried to move, something would press me down, not with hands, but with thoughts, like they could control my body remotely through sheer will. I remember bright lights, a low-frequency hum, tools I didn't recognise, moving on their own. They would place something over my ears, and the dream would always end the same way, with me falling upward into darkness. Then I'd wake up, 3:33 every time. After 2 weeks, I bought a camera and set it up in my bedroom, a simple motion sensor cam with night vision. I wanted proof, or at least peace of mind. That night, I slept straight through, first time in weeks, but when I checked the footage the next morning, the file was corrupted. Only 2 frames remained. The first was me sleeping, the second was me sitting upright, eyes wide open, mouth slack, staring at something just outside the frame. That was enough for me. I called in sick, packed a bag, and drove 3 hours to stay with my brother. But it didn't matter. They came there too. Because I know his dog, usually calm, went berserk at exactly 3:33 a.m. Barking at the window, growling at nothing. I woke up drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling, heart racing. And this time, I remembered everything. I remembered being pulled from my bed, not through the door, but through the wall, like matter didn't apply. I remembered floating, surrounded by an unnatural stillness before being placed in the same cornerless room from the dreams. But the worst part, they let me watch. I watched as they opened up something in my side. No blood, no pain, and they inserted a black wire that seemed to vanish beneath my skin. I watched my body twitch and convulse like a puppet, and one of them, taller than the rest, stepped close, bent down, and placed his head right next to mine, and without moving its mouth, it said, "You agreed to this." I haven't slept through the night since. I took the camera to a tech specialist. He tried recovering the corrupted footage. He did but one thing, an image file buried deep in the metadata. It was a photo of my bedroom, taken from the ceiling, and the timestamp, 3:33 a.m. This happened in 2019. I was driving from Tucson to Flagstaff, middle of the night, trying to make good time and avoid traffic. I like night drives, less cars, and there's something peaceful about desert when it's dark. I was somewhere between Payson and Winslow when I saw him. A guy standing on the side of the road, waving his arms. He wasn't stumbling or acting drunk, just standing there with this urgent look, like he needed help. I slowed down, rolled my window down, and asked if he was okay. tried to make small talk, just sat there in the passenger seat staring straight ahead. I asked him what happened, why he was out here without a car or gear. He said, I was hiking and got lost. I asked where he started from, but he just said, farther out. I should have pressed him more, but the way he said it made my skin crawl a little, like he wasn't lying exactly, but he wasn't telling the truth either. After a few miles, I noticed something strange. He wasn't wearing any shoes. His feet were bare, dirty, but not scratched up or bloody like you'd expect from someone walking through the desert. His soles looked smooth, too smooth. I kept driving, suddenly very aware of how isolated we were. No other cars, no gas stations, just scrub and cactus and the road. I tried to keep it light, asking where he was headed, but he never gave a straight answer. Then he said, do you ever think about how quiet it is out here? I said, yeah, I guess. He turned and looked at me real slow, then said, it wasn't supposed to be this quiet. I asked him what he meant, but he just smiled. Not a friendly smile, more like someone pretending to be friendly. I told him I'd drop him off at the next diner I saw. 10 minutes later, we pulled into a 24-hour joint just off the highway. Classic chrome place, neon sign buzzing overhead. He said thanks and got out, walked straight inside without looking back. I waited a minute. Something in me needed to see him go in. I followed a bit later, went in to get some coffee and maybe asked the waitress about him. She looked confused when I described him. You came in alone, she said. No one came in before you. I looked around. Only 2 truckers at the counter, deep in their own conversations. No barefoot guy in a windbreaker. I checked the restroom, thinking maybe he slept in there. Empty. I asked to check the security footage, but the manager wasn't in. So I left my number, got my coffee, and hit the road. Before I left the lot, I decided to check the passenger seat. No dust, no dirt, no sign anyone had ever been there, except for one thing. A scrap of fabric, about the size of my hand, metallic looking, almost like foil, but it didn't crinkle. It felt soft, warm, like it was alive. I brought it home and kept it in a drawer for a while, but eventually it just disappeared. I didn't throw it away, it was just gone one day. I still take that road sometimes, and I always look for that stretch where I picked him up, but it's never quite where I remember. The road changes a little each time, like it's moving around. I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. It started with the lights, not in the sky, in my bedroom. I live alone in a small house, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and hills. No neighbours for half a mile in any direction. No light pollution. I know what the sky is supposed to look like. But this wasn't the sky. It was 2:30 AM when I woke up. I remember the clock exactly, because the second I opened my eyes, the power cut out. The clock went black. No hum from the fridge, no buzz from the phone charger. Dead silence. And then the light came. It wasn't coming through the window. It was just there, pure white, no source, like the air itself was glowing. I couldn't move, not because I was scared, because I physically couldn't. Sleep paralysis, that's what I told myself at first. I'd had it before, years ago, but this was different. I wasn't paralysed in my bed, I was somewhere else entirely. When the light faded, I was standing, not lying down, not sitting, standing, and I was in a room, but not any kind of room I can explain. It had no corners, the walls were curved into the floor, the ceiling into the walls, seamless, pale, off-white, with a faint shimmer, like mother of pearl. There were no lines, but everything was evenly lit, and I wasn't alone. There were 3 of them, about 4 foot tall, grey skin that looked almost transparent. inside my head, like they were broadcasting thoughts, not words, just intentions. Observe, examine, extract. They moved like water, smooth and precise, no wasted motion. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my body wasn't mine. I was a passenger inside it, frozen while they circled me. One of them reached up and touched my temple with 2 fingers. Suddenly, my mind was flooded with images, not memories, not mine. Stars, binary, planets I didn't recognize, machines too complex to understand, beings, other beings hooked up to something, pulsing, glowing, then something else, a spiral, black and endless, pulling inward, consuming everything. The grey stepped back. I could feel curiosity, like it was trying to gauge my reaction. Then it tilted its head, and I was lying down on a cold surface, still in that seamless room. A soft humming started, deep, vibrating through my bones. My vision blurred. The light grew brighter until it swallowed everything. And then I was back in my bed. 2:16 a.m. 3 minutes had passed. Except when I got up the next morning, my phone said it was Wednesday. I'd gone to bed on Monday. I lost 36 hours. I called my job and told them I'd been sick. They'd said I'd already emailed them, told them I had the flu and needed time off. I checked my sent folder. Sure enough, there was the message, but I don't remember writing it. The wording wasn't how I speak. There was also a new folder on my phone, buried deep in system files. It had a name that I didn't recognise. Inside was a single video, just a few seconds long. The video showed me standing in that room with no corners, staring straight ahead, and something was behind me, tall, thin, watching. It wasn't one of the greys, it was something else. I live on a small farm in southern Michigan called Water County. Been here most of my life. It's quiet out here, nothing but fields, woods, and the occasional passing a truck. That kind of isolation is comforting until something starts watching you. It started last August. My animals, goats mostly, got restless at night, pacing, bleating, acting like something was stalking around. I figured coyotes or maybe a cougar, though we haven't seen one in years. Then I started hearing the clicking. It came from around the barn. Every night, just after midnight, sharp, fast, clicking sounds, like someone tapping metal with fingernails. I walked to the property with a flashlight, rifle in hand, but found nothing, not even tracks. So I set up trail cams, just one at first, on the barn door. What I caught the next morning didn't make sense. The footage started normal, barn, night vision, a bit of wind. Then, around 12:47 a.m, the camera fuzzed out for 2 seconds. When it came back, something was standing in front of the door. It was tall, thin, and pale. Its skin looked like damp clay, and its head was too big. Huge black eyes, no mouth that I could see. It just stood there, motionless, for over 4 minutes, staring at the camera. Then, the screen went black again. When it came back, it was gone. I figured maybe it was a trick of the light, a prank, or something glitching the camera. So I set up 3 more the next night, 1 on the barn, and 2 in the trees. The same thing happened. At 12:44, the audio cut out. Around 12:47, static. Then, the figure again. But this time, it moved. Fast. One frame, it was by the barn. Next frame, 20 feet closer. Then, it was gone. I decided to stay up that night. Took a lawn chair and my 22 and sat facing the barn under the stars. The clicking started at exactly 12:40. Soft at first, then louder. And then the air got thick, like pressure building before a storm. My ears started ringing. The goats went dead silent. Then That's the only word I had for it. Not burned, not broken, melted, like someone had poured acid over it. I called the sheriff. He came out, looked around, and told me I probably had trespassers. I showed him the footage. He said the camera must have glitched, but when he got back in his cruiser, he sat there for 10 minutes before driving off, just staring at the barn. The trail cams are gone now, all of them. Disappeared one night, mounts and all, and sometimes, when I lie in bed, I hear the clicking again, only now it's coming from inside the house. I was part of a 4-person research team stationed at a remote outpost in northern Alberta. We were collecting ice core samples for climate research. It was boring work mostly. Cold, routine, isolating. But something happened during the last week of the mission that none of us talk about anymore. One of us doesn't talk at all. The outpost had a satellite dish set up for emergency transmissions. One night, around 3 a.m, the communications tech, Dan, woke us up, said he was picking up some strange on the low frequency bands. He played it back. It wasn't a human voice. It wasn't Morse code. It was a repeating pattern. 3 pulses, then a pause, then 4, then 3 again. It sounded like a heartbeat made out of static. Dan was freaking out a little. He said it wasn't coming from a satellite or known band. He triangulated it and found it was coming from the ice, directly beneath our outpost. We laughed at first, thought he was pulling our leg, but he wasn't. We lowered an underwater mic down one of our drill holes and left it overnight. When we played it back the next day, there was more. The pattern had changed, still static-like, but now with what sounded like breath. Like something was breathing slowly beneath us, and something else. There was a clicking, faint but rhythmic, behind the breath, like fingernails tapping glass. That night we lost power. The generator died, and all the backup systems failed. Dan went out to check the fuel line and never came back. We found him a half-mile from camp, barefoot, sitting in the snow. He didn't speak, just stared up at the sky, mouth hanging open. His eyes were wrong. They weren't bloodshot, they were black. Not like he'd been injured, more like something was inside him, looking out. We got him back inside, wrapped him in blankets and tried to warm him up, but he just kept whispering the same phrase over and over. They're here, they're underneath. We tried calling for evac, but the comms were totally dead. The dish looked like it had been twisted, almost melted, not by wind, by heat. That night, I woke up to see someone, or something, standing at the window. The glass was fogged from our breath, but I could make out the outline. It was tall and very thin. The head was massive. The arms hung too low. It didn't move, didn't blink. It just stared. I blinked, and it was gone. The next morning, there were small prints in the snow. 3 toes, each ending in a sharp point. No heel, just those tracks, circling the entire outpost. We got picked up 5 days later. Dan hasn't spoken since. The rest of us went through debriefing, medical, psych evals. I didn't say much. None of us did. I still have the audio file Dan recorded. I play it sometimes late at night. The signal's still there, and the last time I listened, the clicks had stopped. Now it's just breath. Breathing in, breathing out, waiting. This happened back in 2021 on a red-eye flight from Seattle to Boston. I was flying back after visiting my sister. I fly a lot for work, so I'm pretty used to long-haul flights. I usually pop in headphones and knock out for a few hours, but that night I didn't sleep at all. I was in seat 19A, a window seat. Aisle was empty when I boarded, and the middle seat filled in last with some young guy in a hoodie. Across the aisle, in 19F, sat a man in a suit, probably mid-40s, very still. extract out of an old corporate training video. Anyway, about an hour into the flight, the cabin lights dimmed and people settled in. I was half watching some movie, half dozing, when I glanced over and noted something weird across the aisle. The guy in the suit, he wasn't moving at all. I know that sounds normal. People sleep on planes, but he wasn't sleeping. His eyes were wide open, and staring straight ahead. At first, I figured he was just zoned out, but after 20 minutes of zero movement, no blink, no twitch, nothing, I started to get that tight feeling in my gut. Something was off. Then, I blinked, and in that split second, he glitched. I don't know how else to say it. His image flickered like an old VHS tape with bad tracking, just for a frame, like it was made of static, and when it stopped, his head was tilted ever so slightly, like it had jumped position. I froze. I rubbed my eyes, looked again. He was back to normal, staring straight ahead. I thought maybe I was tired, or my screen had reflected weird, but then it happened again. Just a little static ripple around his edges, like he wasn't quite in sync with everything else. I turned to the guy next to me, hoodie guy, and whispered, "Hey, do you see that guy across the aisle?" He didn't even look, just said, "What guy?" I said, "The guy in the suit, 19F. He glanced over, then looked back at me and said, "That seat's empty." I stared at him. "No, it's not." He looked again, paused a second, then got this confused look. "What? Weird. I didn't notice anyone there." I leaned over and flagged the flight attendant as she passed. I asked if the guy in 19F had requested a meal. She checked her tablet, then frowned. "There's no passenger assigned to that seat." I said, "But there's someone sitting there." She looked. Her eyes scanned the row, and then her whole face changed. You know when someone sees something they weren't supposed to? That frozen moment. That's what happened. She turned to me and said, "I'll be right back," then booked it down the aisle. A few minutes later, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be dimming the cabin lights again to allow passengers to rest." That was it. Just lights off again, but I felt it, like they were trying to distract us. When the lights went down, I looked back at the seat across the aisle. Empty. No static man. No man at all. Just gone. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to convince myself I was sleep deprived and seeing things. I didn't speak to anyone else the rest of the flight. When we landed, I stood up fast to get a good look around. Nothing. Seat 19F was still empty. Even the tray table was clean, like no one had touched it. But here's the part that still messes with me. As I got off the plane, I opened my backpack to grab my phone and found a folded piece of paper sitting on top of everything. It wasn't there before. I opened it up. No handwriting, no marking, just strange symbols, almost like circuitry or alien script. And at the bottom, one line in plain English: "Don't look up." I never told anyone until now. I still have the paper. I've had people look at it, try to decode it. Nothing's worked. But sometimes, late at night, if I hold it up to the light, the symbols seem to shimmer, like they're moving. I woke up in the middle of a cornfield with no shoes and no memory of how I got there. It was a Sunday morning. I remember that clearly, because the night before, I was at my buddy Kyle's house watching a UFC fight. We'd had a couple of beers, not enough to black out, and I left around midnight to head home. The next thing I know, I'm standing in ankle-deep mud, 20 miles from town, under a pale, grey sky. No roads, no cars, just rows and rows of corn. At first, I thought I'd been jumped, maybe drugged, but my clothes weren't torn, and nothing was missing. My wallet and phone still in my pockets. But the phone was dead, battery at 2%, and it shut off before I could get a GPS started having these dreams, not regular dreams, vivid, like I was awake in them. Every time I was lying on a cold metal table, unable to move. My eyes were open, and I could see them. Small, grey figures, thin arms, oversized heads, and those eyes, black and wet-looking, like they weren't even seeing me with them, just absorbing. They moved around me, poking at something just out of my line of sight. I couldn't scream, couldn't blink. It was like sleep paralysis, but worse, more real. I went to my doctor after a few nights of this, told him I'd been having vivid hallucinations. He ran a bunch of tests, blood work, neurological scans, sleep studies. Everything came back clean, but he did find one thing that still keeps me up. There was a small, circular scar behind my left ear, perfectly round, about the size of a pencil eraser. Clean, like it had healed weeks ago. I don't remember injuring myself there, ever. A few days later, I decided to check my phone, see if maybe I'd taken any photos that night, or if the GPS had logged anything. When I powered it up, there were 12 photos in my hidden folder. I never used that folder. They were blurry, dark, grainy, but some of them showed a room, curved walls, a pale green-blue glow. One of them showed a figure standing in front of me, long arms, no clothes, eyes like oil slicks. Another was taken from what looked like a great height. I swear to God, it looked like Earth from above. Cloud patterns, curvature, everything. I deleted them. I was shaking. I didn't want to believe they were real, but the next morning they were back. Same photos, same folder. Only now there was a new one. A picture of me sleeping in bed, taken from about 2 foot away. That same night, my left ear started buzzing, like there was a fly trapped in it. I went to urgent care. The nurse flushed it and said, "That's strange. This looks like metal." She pulled out a tiny silver, looked like a splinter, but silver, not wood. She kept it for analysis. I called the clinic a few days later, and they told me there was no record of it being collected. And the nurse who helped me, they said she didn't work there, not anymore. I don't tell people this story, not really. I mean, how do you? Most would think I had a psychotic break or a drinking problem, but I know what I remember, and I know what I don't, which, honestly, is worse. Well, that concludes today's Scary Reddit stories. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this creepy journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please also